Hands, please. I'll tell you when you can shout it out. Raise your hand and tell me what you see. What did I just say?
Oh, I did not.
I said raise your hand and tell me. Nice observation. So you got some of last year's grass and this year's coming up, right? What do you see? Trees. Do you see a lot that way or a lot that way?
That way.
Out on the open prairie, not many trees, right? Prairie actually does not have many. I know you know this. I don't expect you to know, but you might know this. There are only 2 types of trees that were originally in this whole side of Nebraska. We will see both today. You've probably seen both and maybe don't know. One is pretty more famous than the other. What do you think? Yes?
Green trees and brown trees.
No. Yes, one is called the bur oak tree, right? Bur oaks were in Nebraska, always. They are what we call an oak savanna, which is a type of prairie.
Pine. What?
None. They were all brought in later. Maybe some way over out by Chadron, right? Piney woods out there, it's mountainous, they do have pines there, but not in this part of the state. Not originally. There you go, cottonwoods. Right? Big, tall cottonwoods. Both of those trees were originally here, near the prairie. They need a lot of water, trees, and so open prairie sometimes can get very dry, depending on the year. Like you guys might have noticed, we were in a drought earlier this year. We've got some rain lately, which is good. Yeah, so not a lot of trees. Any other observations or things you think about when I say prairie? Yeah. Weeds. We have some of those, right? Lots of different meanings for weeds, right? They're different in town than they are out here. We'll talk about that when we're out there. What else? Yeah, we got a creek right over there. Not quite a full river. Looks big because it's a pond. We'll check that out too. It's important. It used to not be what we have now, so we'll talk about that. One more. Yeah, good question. So we don't have prairie dogs here. They do love the prairie. You may have, I'm guessing, towards Central City, you may have prairie dog ponds not far from
Yeah. Yeah.
We do not have them on this side of the state. There's a reason. Now, this is going back till 4th grade. But, I know Miss B is a great scientist. So someone tell me, if you remember, there are 4 kinds of prairie in Nebraska. Everybody know a kind of prairie that we have? Because we are in one of them that prairie dogs hate. What's one? Oh, that's a totally different habitat. Only 4 types of prairie. The prairie is tall grass. That's where we are today. We're in the tall grass prairie. What's another kind?
Tall hedge.
Yes. What's it called when you do this? Puts 2 things together. Mixed grass prairie. So then we also have yep, we're short grass. Short grass, tall grass, mixed grass. And then Nebraska has a special one that nowhere else in the world has. Out west, it's very so the soil is very loose. There you go, sand hills. The sand hills. That's one of the most intact prairies left on the planet. There are 4 big prairies on the planet, and that's one of them. It's really, really cool. Most of the others are smaller because we needed agriculture, people, development, all of that. So let's get back to prairie dogs. Why do prairie dogs not live at Spring Creek Prairie? It has to do with what we just talked about. Oh, that's really close. Oh, super close. You're almost there. Yes, but why? You're right. Why? A little more. There you go. It's too tall. Prairie dogs are only about that tall. If they needed, when they live in mixed or especially short grass prairie out west, right, they eat the grass down so they can always see a predator coming, whether it's a hawk, coyote, something coming after them. If they had to eat tall grass prairie, they'd be so huge they'd never get down their hole, or they'd never get it cut down, right? Too much grass. So they do not live in this part of the world. They live west, where the grasses are short enough that they can clear it and still see predators coming. So, not too far west. I know that there's a few prairie dogs just that way. But usually it's once you get to mixed grass prairie, not tall grass prairie. Very cool. So we are in tall grass prairie today. The reason Spring Creek is here as a nature center, right? We're part of Audubon, which is a bird-centric. We love birds. but it's to protect that prairie. What you see out there is pretty rare. We have almost 800 acres of tall grass prairie that was never ever plowed. Most of the time, even if we have some prairie, it's restored, right? Because as the settlers came through, maybe they planted and then moved on, etc. 600 or more of these acres. You guys know the size of an acre? About? Yeah, football field, right? So 800 of those. 600 or more, because we do have some woodlands and some wetlands, are prairie that is as close as you get to like it was thousands of years ago. Now, and this is the station we're going to talk more about later, prairies are something that we call a working land. Everybody know what I mean? What could I mean by a working land? What do you think?
Like a land.
Yeah, exactly. So people have used it since there have been people on it, right? We manage it now. That's the station we're going to talk about with me this afternoon. What we do to help keep it healthy. We can't just leave it alone, as much as we'd like to. There's almost always been people on it. But as far back as the Native Americans, they were stewarding the land. They were taking care of it. They knew way back then to light small fires that it would be really, really good to like burn an area maybe to the river where it wouldn't get away. And that new grass, the bison would come and want to eat that, and then they'd have food. They could put their shelter not far away. We learned that as settlers came in, right, came across. We still do that today. So it's really important. We use fire. We use haying, right? That's like just a big mower. You guys know that. And grazing. And the fourth one that we always forget, the fourth one is resting. We don't do a thing every so often. Okay, so prairie management and land use, very important. We'll talk more about it. Last question real quick, when you look out there, we'll see them out there when we get out there. There are huge rocks in the ground, and you see just the tip, kind of like an iceberg. Anybody know how they got there?
Years of sediment go over the rocks and they
Oh, that's really close. How'd they originally get there? That, like something happened thousands and thousands of years ago that deposited those huge rocks there. That's what happened to them since. You're right. Not quite. Close. Not running water though. You know? Yes, very good. The glaciers, ice age, right? Frozen rivers, push drop them off. The other reason why this has never been farmed. Hilly, and you can't get plowed through all those huge rocks, right? So it's really, really cool that we get to explore it. We have it for the wildlife. We've got trails all around it. You're going to explore not only the prairie, we'll do prairie for 2 of the stations today. The other ones are woodlands and wetlands. So the woodlands are going to be very different. Be pretty obvious at first, but you'll get to explore some important things going on with decomposition right now. Very important going on in the woodlands. And all the water moving through the woodlands, right, for the creek. And then the wetland. You'll be at the wetland today not only having fun seeing what you can catch, right, as well as by what you catch, you can figure out if your pond or your water source is clean for wildlife and people or not.